Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and this video serves as an update to my best fully upgraded cars series where I take all vehicles in GTA 5 around a circuit to find the best to use for racing. Now, we finally got all of the vehicles from the Bikers DLC, so it's finally time to take them all around the circuit and see how they all did in comparison to each other. This Bikers DLC gave us 21 different vehicles. 13 of them we got initially, and then the other 8 were drip fed throughout week after week after week. But finally we got all of them, and in last place for all of the vehicles is the Yuga Classic in 21st place for this DLC. A 1 minute 30 lap time that it gets really isn't very quick. We've seen this already. It's not a very quick vehicle. It's nowhere near the pace in the Vans class. It's quite far off the pace, in fact. And there's just nothing really special about it. Obviously it's got some decent modifications, but my videos are all about racing performance and it's just not very quick. Now in 20th place we've got the Fagio mod. This is the 39th quickest motorcycle in the game, which actually makes it the second slowest. So there's something that I need to point out is that we saw quite some interesting features to do with some of the motorcycles introduced in this DLC, and it's to do with some of the modifications that they get. For example, with the Fagio mod, adding the fenders on the front of the vehicle increased traction like a spoiler, and that's the case with some of the other bikes in this video. Most of them are to do with headlights, or belt drive covers is a common one as well. I'm not going to mention every single one, but basically make sure to check that out when you get any of these bikes. And if you see the traction bar in Los Santos Customs increase, then you will be getting a traction bonus from that modification. So yeah, the Fagio mod is the second worst motorcycle in the game, and the Fagio Sport is the third worst motorcycle in the game, coming in 19th place, 38th best in the motorcycles class overall. And then in 18th place for this DLC we've got the Tornado Rat Rod, the 14th quickest sports classic car in the game, a 118.2, a hell of a lot quicker than the first 3 vehicles that we've just seen, but still not very quick. So yeah, the 2 Fagios are quicker than the regular Fagio. Obviously it's the regular Fagio that is the slowest in the motorcycles class overall. In 40th place we do have 40 motorcycles in the game now, which is absolutely crazy. And then the Fagio mod and the Fagio Sport are a little bit quicker every time, but all 3 of them aren't very quick at all. Now in 17th place we've got the Western Rat bike. This gets a 117.6, which isn't too bad of a lap time. It's actually pretty much the same lap time as a taxi, so just a normal taxi unmodified that you find around the streets, so it's not all that quick. And that gets a 117.6. it's the 37th quickest motorcycle in the game. It's only 1 place ahead of the Fagio Sport. It's not very quick at all, and just ahead of it is the Wolfsbane. Now something else that we saw with this DLC is pretty much copies of bikes. So the Wolfsbane here with a 117.4 is pretty much exactly the same as the Rat bike. They're almost identical. They're identical in the way that they drive. They're identical in the way that their stats in the game and their acceleration, traction, braking, all that kind of stuff. They are pretty much identical under the hood. They're pretty much identical in terms of the shape of the vehicle as well and what they're like. Obviously the Wolfsbane is kind of the clean version of the Rat bike, but they ultimately get very similar lap times, and both of them aren't that great. But we will see that with some of the other vehicles in this DLC, that we find a similar story with some of the other bikes. Now in 15th place for the DLC we've got the Raptor. Not very quick, the Raptor, 111.3, only the 33rd place in the sports class. It's very unstable and very difficult, but it can be a bit of fun every now and then. And then moving on to 14th place, we've got the Chimera, which is a very unique vehicle. Haven't seen anything like this before. A 108.9, that's a pretty big decrease in lap time from the Raptor, and that's pretty respectable. It is only the 33rd quickest in the motorcycles class. I keep saying muscle cars class for some reason, but the motorcycles class, it's only 33rd because the motorcycles class is very big and in general very quick. But it's still, not too bad of a vehicle overall. Just ahead of it, in 13th place, we've got the Western Daemon. Now, this is actually technically the Daemon Custom. So in the game files, this is called the Daemon Custom, and it's exactly the same under the hood as the regular Daemon. The regular Daemon you can't actually buy, you can only find it on the streets. Both of the vehicles are actually called Daemon, which makes it even more confusing. But in the game files, this is the new one, and it is called Damon Custom, so that's what I'm going to call it. It's very similar to the Dubster and the Dubster 2 in that respect, but ultimately the Damon Custom in terms of performance is pretty much exactly the same as the regular Damon. It just has more modification options and actually costs you some money. Now in 12th place, we've got the Zombie Bobber with a 108.3, so very close. All the bikes that we've seen so far in this area, they're all very close in terms of lap time, and no prizes for guessing what is after the Zombie Bobber. It's obviously the Zombie Chopper. 11th place for the Zombie Chopper, 108.2. It's only 1/10 of a second quicker than the Bobber. Again, pretty much exactly the same, like the Damon Custom and the Damon, like the Rat Bike and the Wolfsbane. Both the zombie bikes are exactly the same. The Zombie Chopper, you can actually fit 2 people on it. The Zombie Bobber, you can only fit 1. But ultimately, under the hood, in terms of performance, they're exactly the same, and it doesn't really matter which one you get. But ultimately, they're still off the pace in the motorcycles class. Now, top 10, finally making our way to the top 10, and the Avarice is in 10th place. 26th quickest motorcycle in the game. Honestly, there's not an awful lot to say about this. It's okay, you know, it's not too bad. Having a belt drive cover does increase traction, like some of the other bikes like I mentioned earlier. A 107.1, it's okay, you know, it's sport, mid-tier sport car territory of lap time. But in terms of the motorcycles class, it is in the bottom half. It's only 26th place, and there's just nothing really that stands out about it for me, so there's not an awful lot to really talk about. So let's move on to 9th place, and we have the Manches. Now, the Manches is exactly the same, or very much and nearly exactly the same as another bike that we're about to see, which is the S-Key. That's going to come soon, so their lap times are very, very similar. Both of them are actually relatively good off-road, so they both have an off-road traction loss of 0.4, which means that they don't lose too much speed off-road in comparison to other vehicles that have a higher off-road traction loss, which is a bit of a shame because neither of them can be used in off-road races. I'll come on to that point in a second, because in 8th place we do actually have a proper off-road vehicle that can be used in off-road races, and that's the Street Blazer. The 106.4 that the Street Blazer gets makes it the quickest off-road vehicle in the game. That is the quickest vehicle that is in the off-road class. However, that isn't the quickest vehicle that can be used in off-road races. That is still the BF400 bike, which is a good 3 seconds per lap quicker than this and does completely ruin the class. And it's a bit of a shame really, because if it wasn't for the BF400 being usable, the Street Blazer would be right on the pace of the Trophy Truck and the Desert Raid, which aren't too far behind in off-road races. As it is now though, we've got two sort of dirt bikes that can be used in off-road races, which are the Sanchez and the BF400. BF400 obviously completely ruins the class, and then we've got 3 bikes that are relatively good in an off-road situation that can't be used in off-road races. That includes the S-Key, the Manches and the Enduro. So, you know, they can't make up their mind, but the S-Key and the Manches are very good off-road if you're just in free roam, but they can't be used in off-road races. But ultimately they are pretty much exactly the same in terms of performance. Obviously, as we saw, if you were paying attention to the lap times there, they are all very, very close between the 3 vehicles that we've just seen. So in 6th place, we've got the Nightblade, just missing out on the top 5. It's only the 15th quickest motorcycle in the game with a 104.0. Not all that quick, the Nightblade. And in 5th place, we're finally into the top 5. We've got the Sanctus. So the Sanctus with a 103.3, it was a lot of money for this vehicle, and the performance didn't really live up to that. Obviously, it was more Halloween themed vehicle that Rockstar wanted to put out to make as much money as possible, I guess, and get people to buy it for no readily apparent reason apart from the fact that it's a little bit special in some areas. But it is only the 14th quickest motorcycle in the game. It does okay with the lap time that it gets, but it's nothing special. Now in 4th place, we've got the Vortex. This is the 7th quickest motorcycle in the game with a 101.0. That is quicker than any other supercar in the game, so we're now into the levels of performance in terms of motorbikes where you're going to be going around a track quicker than a supercar. So the Vortex isn't too bad at all, you know, it's very, very respectable, not too far off the pace of the top motorbikes. It's not, you know, it's not too bad. It's not certainly in the top level, but it's okay. So in 3rd place, we have the Defiler. The Defiler is a very, very good bike, you know. A 1 minute 0.3 lap time is very, very good, and had it not been for our top 2 in this video, this would be right on the pace of the top motorbikes. It's only a fraction slower than the Barty 801 and the Akuma, which are in now 3rd and 4th place in the motorcycles class. The Defiler is obviously in 5th place in the motorcycles class. It's not too far off the pace of those. It's just the fact that the 2 bikes in 2nd and 1st have really overshadowed this one. The Defiler is a very, very good, very, very capable bike. It's just that it's now 2nd best and it's off the pace because of the 2 bikes that we're about to see, the first of which is the Hakuchu Drag. This was the very first vehicle from this DLC that I tested because its lap time was absolutely ridiculous, with a 57.590. Now the Hakuchu Drag is the 2nd quickest from this DLC, and it's also the 2nd quickest motorcycle in the game, just being narrowly beaten out by 1/10 of a second by the vehicle that we're about to see after this. The thing is, the Hakuchu Drag has a higher top speed and better acceleration than the vehicle in 1st place. It just isn't quite as good in the corners. It doesn't have the traction levels. It's the only motorbike in the game where it's quicker to lean forward than it is to wheelie with it, but apart from that, it's a very, very good vehicle, and it's the one that I certainly prefer to use in races. But ultimately, the number one is the Shotaro. It's a very, very expensive vehicle, and you're paying a lot of money for 1/10 of a second difference. But on any tracks with even more corners than this one, it will dominate because its traction levels are absolutely unbelievable. It makes up all of its time in the corners. It doesn't have a great top speed. Its acceleration is pretty average, but it makes up all of the time in the corners. It's so quick around those corners. It will be more difficult to extract that lap time out of it because of that, but as long as you can do that and as long as you can drive it properly, it will give you an incredible lap time with a 57.490. Like I said, it's only 1/10 of a second quicker than the Hakuchu Drag around a track like this. On some tracks it will be worse, on some tracks it will be better, but ultimately around my testing track and in my testing, the Shotaro is the quickest motorcycle in the game. And hey, it lights up, so that seems to be enough reason for some people to buy it, even if I don't like it personally. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's all of the vehicles from the Bikers DLC. Next up, we will have all of the top speeds as well for the top speed the testing series. Be sure to keep an eye out for that. But finally, we've got them all. I do hate the way that Rockstar release them one every week like this, and it takes ages to get all of them. But we finally got them all tested, and I really appreciate you guys showing a bit of patience. And thank you guys for all your support, as always. I really, really do appreciate it. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.